We're now joined by gift of the Gvers Founder, Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, and he joins us via our video link. Dr. Imtiaz, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition on SABC News. I mean, let's start off here. We finally got to witness this afternoon the first bunch of hostages making their way out of, when it comes to them being held captive. What do you make of the latest coming out from the Middle East and finally witnessing the hostages being released this afternoon?
Well, good evening, Mabal. It's always good for hostage. We've been involved with hostage negotiations, and we know what the family goes through and what difficult. Great thing that the hostages can go home as they've been experiencing inside Gaza, so I'm sure they're totally traumatized. Besides being hostages, they are totally traumatized, experiencing the bombings in the area. So really, it's a great sign, both for the hostages going home and at the same time for the family members waiting for them. And in addition to those Thai workers and the Filipino, as a side deal, they must be totally traumatized, being caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time. At the same time, of course, we wished well for the prisoners being caught up in Israel itself. But that worries me. You're going to release 150 prisoners, but on the other side, in 6-7 weeks, you take 3,000 prisoners on the West and occupied West Bank, Jerusalem. So I don't see the point of that. For every one release, you're going to take 10 back. So that part is very
And Dr. Imtiaz, what do you make of this actual moment we are witnessing, especially with the two warring sides coming together, to make this truce possible? I know that you also there at the same time criticizing the process in terms of how this release of hostages is indeed taking place. But what do you make of the two sides actually coming together and having this truce to see some families being reunited?
Peace is always the best way. There's no alternative for peace. It should be extended to beyond release of hostages and prisoners. It should extend beyond a 4-day ceasefire. It should be extended to bring a permanent ceasefire and the beginning of a just political solution to all sides. Too many have been lost. There's been disturbance of 75 years, uncertainty, and discord, many wars, and over 75 years, it's proven wars time down as a proper leader with the support of the world. All of the UN resolutions that have been set down. They have a situation, and let's terminate the killing people. The men, women have been hated in this side. This has to stop. These are unarmed, defenseless people. You bomb hospitals, schools, UN refugee camps, water supply. You cut off fuel. It's totally inhumane. This has to stop. And I applaud the Spanish Prime Minister and even the French Prime Minister was there in Rafah today saying that has to stop. Is not.
Yeah. Dr. Imtiaz, we're really struggling to hear you there with your connection. We'll just try and take a quick ad break and try to re-establish this line so that we can continue this conversation. That is... All right, let's go back to one of that top story when it comes to the hostages being released there at the Rafah crossing. Let's go back to that interview with Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman so you can give us the latest coming out there from the Middle East. Dr. Imtiaz, thank you once again for joining us here on SABC News. Let's go back to that question I asked you a bit earlier on when it comes to the hostages being released and what this moment means, especially for the two warring sides agreeing to this truce.
There's multiple facets here, Bali. Number one, the fact that they could get together, that's a huge benefit. Because in the long run, the only way to solve a problem is through peaceful negotiations. War doesn't solve any problems. There are no winners in wars. It causes hatred, enmity, vengeance. It extends beyond the country that the fighting is taking place in. It goes to the neighboring countries. It spreads to the rest of the world. It picks groups at loggerheads with each other. It doesn't solve any problems. Mature leaders, sensible leaders who act in the interest of their people, sit down at the table and have negotiations. There's many countries in the world who want to sit down and say, look, let's solve this problem. You can actually feel the peace today. And you can feel the calmness and the serenity, not actually being the war zone. You're on the outside, thousands of kilometers away. You can feel the relief or the tension of the people in the area. Even though they know that in 4 days' time, the bombs may start again, they're hopeful that it won't happen, but they know it's a very real possibility that it will happen. But even 4 days of respite is so important to them. You would think that people will want to leave and run out of Gaza. There's actually people waiting on the Egyptian border to come into Gaza. People want to know the state of their homes, the state of their families, how the vehicles are, how the pets are, what's going on in the country. People, the whole life they've lived it. They want to come in, and this 4 days means so much for their well-being, their emotional status, and reconnecting with family people without the fear of being hit by a rocket in a hospital, in a residential home, or in a school or a UN shelter. So it's very, very critical that we look beyond the 4 days and that world powers get involved and try to extend 3 to 4 days at a time and eventually bring a total ceasefire and a permanent solution that there can be no more war in that area ever again.
And Dr. Imtiaz, of course, so we understand that you're also assisting there when it comes to humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza. If maybe you can just give us a bit of insight to what are the immediate needs for the people of Gaza at this moment?
The needs are unlimited. They're in every category. You know, there's 2.3 million people that need everything. They need psychological and emotional support, but the first thing they need immediately is fuel. Fuel is required to pump the generators at the hospitals. Fuel is required for the water plants. Fuel is required for communication systems. Fuel is required to move the sewage plants to make sure there is no contamination. There's already diarrhea and disease in the area. Then those who are injured, they need to get to hospitals that have fuel and generators and functional hospitals. The Jordanians have just taken a new field hospital with extra medical personnel. You require additional medical personnel to relieve those who have been killed and those who have been exhausted over 48 days. Food is a big requirement all over the city. A simple thing like ladies' sanitary pads are required in huge quantities all over. Water, once the desalination plants work for drinking, for cleaning, for sewage, for sanitation, water is required in a big way. And of course, hygiene items, tents, they've got nowhere to live. There's no shelter. It's raining, it's freezing, it's cold. They need tents, warm types of tents, weatherproof, weather-resistant, but warm blankets and warm clothes. Kids get soaked outside and they come and ask the parents, can you please change our clothes? And the parents got no clothes to change the kids into. Of course, those require additional care besides injuries. There's people with chronic medication, chronic health needs. They need to be seen to. And then people need to be buried. Mass graves, and people need to have a decent funeral for their loved ones. All these are parts of the things that have to be done inside Gaza in a very short space of time, and 4 days is just not enough.
Indeed, a lot of aid they needed and a lot of help for the people of Gaza. What would you say is actually being prioritized for the people of Gaza at this time?
Well, you ask them, you know, and they tell you. They tell you the first thing we need is fuel, we need medical care, we need food, the things that I mentioned to you. Yeah. Fuel, medical care, food, and of course, they need counseling, they need emotional support. It can't be done in 4 days, but just some kind of reassurance. And of course, the biggest need they need is a guarantee that the bombs won't fall again. And of course, the other things I mentioned earlier is shelter. They've got nowhere to stay. So shelter is critical because over 300,000 buildings have been damaged. You know, over 70 schools have been hit. 39 out of 35, only 9 hospitals out of 35 are functional. All this needs to be seen to field hospitals, medical personnel, medical supplies. No anesthetic. There's no anesthetic. People have been operated on and horrendously suffering from pain. A surgeon operated on his child with no anesthetic, and his own child died from the pain. And those are the kind of things that they're going through. Antibiotics, analgesia, a whole range of medical equipment. I mean, it's basically anything that you need in any situation, if you're starting a country all over again. They need everything.
And when it comes to this 4-day truce, I mean, a bit earlier on, I mean, you spoke about how they are hopeful that they won't be seeing any bombs anytime soon. What do, you know, when it comes to how they're feeling about this 4 days, one could say of peace, how are they capturing this moment?
Well, they've said exactly what I told you in the beginning. You know, they're hoping that it will carry on, but they know it won't carry on. But in those 4 days, they are thankful for what they have because they have a chance. They want to go to the north, and they stopped from going to the north. They want to go and see their homes. They want to go see this contrary to reports, There's hundreds of thousands of people still in the north who haven't moved. Our teams have been getting lots of calls from the people in the north and saying we need food, we need this, we need that. But we can't access them, we can't get there. Everything's blocked, the bombing is too incessant, the roads are damaged, you can't move, it's rubble all over the shore, it's very, very risky for my teams. I've already lost a team member who was deliberately targeted by Israelis on the 16th of November. Coming from the mosque, him, a pharmacist, and his brother who doesn't work for us, but is a doctor, were targeted and they both died. So we've lost, he's the head of my office. But fortunately, in the second week of the war, I already told him, bring additional personnel because you guys may die. And true to the word, he passed on. But besides that, one of my staff that lives in South Africa, in one attack last week in a refugee camp, lost 50 of our members. 50 of our family members were killed with one attack on a camp. Another member of mine that lives in another part of the world lost 20 in one attack. Collectively, my team members have lost more than 80 family members. Now you need to understand, you're asking me about relief and distribution, which they're doing. They are mourning the death of their own families. They are witnessing bombing. They're exposed to the bombing. They are targets. And yet in the difficult times, they're rolling out food, hygiene packs, medical equipment, medical supplies. And by the way, all that was bought inside Gaza for the last 48 days. So you have the double risk. The risk of trying to find a supplier, a warehouse, a shop, a pharmacy, a business to get all the different items, and then try to find a car with fuel to go to the different areas to distribute. We have 3 desalination plants. When the lights got switched off, they found generators, and the people of Gaza took out fuel from their cars to make the generators run. To save on fuel, then they use donkey carts to deliver water to the different places. So they're being very adept at getting things done, but at high risk and huge emotional trauma to themselves because they've lost their families. In fact, my head of office who passed away on the 16th, who was killed on the 16th of November, 3 days earlier, he said he's not going anywhere to the south. He's taking his wife, his 3 children, the 30 family members, and they're going to sit in the apartment and towards closer to the north, and they're going to wait for the bombs to hit them, to die in dignity as martyrs, unarmed martyrs, as other people have died. They're not going to go out, they're not going to run, they're not going to move, because even when you move out, when Israel tells you to move, they bomb you while you're moving. And they said, this is not a way to live. We will wait and stay there and die as a family. He got killed on the 16th with his brother. Immediately, we moved his 3 children, his wife, and the 30 family members to the south. I can't say safer place. There's no such thing. Safe does not apply to Gaza. There's no such connotation as safe in Gaza.
Yeah, Dr. Imtiaz, thank you so much for your time and that insight and painting a picture for us, to just try and see the situation and what is taking place in Gaza and how it has impacted the people in Palestine. Of course, that is Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman. He is the founder of Gift of the Givers.